Hello and welcome to another edition of the Week in Review. I'm your host Ade Darami, and as ever I always say I have a very special guest who's going to go through 10 stories, big interesting stories from the week, and this week is no exception. I have pleasure to welcome Lamin Jahate. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rami.
Thanks, Lamin. And Lamin works for the GPU and he's also a practicing journalist. And between the two of us, we're going to kick around some of the stories that have made the news in the past week here on QTV. So don't go away, stay with us, and let's get into the very first one. People keep asking the questions, what's happened to our COVID money? Where's it gone? Well, have a look at this clip and you might get an idea.
So for the much talked about COVID-19, 500 millions, so you see where part of it is gone. 96,493,750 is spent on this equipment. So you know where this amount has gone to. And more equipment are being procured from those funds. And when those funds also arrive, you will see the cost applied to them and you will know where these funds have been used.
The first batch of supply.
They had to interrupt my colleague Choi there, but you heard the minister say first batch of supplies have arrived. Lamin, we've all been talking about this thing and we've said, and with no sort of apology, that in a sense COVID-19 has been a blessing in disguise. The kind of resources that are being now put into our health service would never have happened without COVID-19, surely.
I totally agree. I was just telling myself that if you look at the Gambia health system during this COVID period, I think the minimum that we all know is that the health system is overburdened and it's overstretched. Yes. So it is good that the ministry, at least with the support of the government, and I understand with the counterpart support of the World Bank, they are able to buy some medical supplies.
That's correct.
However, though, Mr. Drame, I think my concern is now, if you look at the Gambians today, there is seemingly a general fatigue in the people when it comes to the general preventive measures of COVID-19. The basic thing is the wearing of face masks. You go to the street now, unlike 1 month ago, a lot of the people are not wearing it. You go to many of the institutions now, some of them do have buckets that are placed there for people to wash their hand, but effectively you realize a lot of people are not doing this thing.
I can support you on this with practical example. Only last Sunday, I took a stroll from Paradise Estate to Airport Junction along Coastal Road, and I must have passed maybe 2,000 people, and I swear to you I only passed one other person wearing a mask. I mean, so much so that the person I was with pointed out, say, look, there's somebody else wearing a mask.
Exactly.
So why? Do we think it's gone away?
That's the thing. So we have now become so complacent that we thought corona is going away, because perhaps the test results that we see from the Ministry of Health continuously indicate that the number of positive cases are dropping. But however, if you take a basic analysis of the data, you realize that far less people are tested today than yesterday. For example, I was just trying to do a basic arithmetic of the number of people that are tested so far in October. But you realize that an average test in October, on an average, on daily basis, they test about 120 people.
That's correct, yes.
And out of this, you realize there is a positivity rate of about 3.5 to 7.5%. But if you revise that back, in June, for example, you have a daily test ratio of about 500 per day. During those days, we have been seeing 30%, at least, or an average of 30% positivity rate. What is the message from this? The higher the test, the higher the positivity ratio. The fact that the positivity ratio has reduced so much, it doesn't mean corona is not in the Gambia. What it means is far less people are tested today than they were tested yesterday. And I think this would be a concern for the government. Because the message they are inadvertently sending out to the people is that corona is actually going out of the Gambia. This may not be the case. What is the case is less people are tested, and I think they should come out to tell people this.
I think
because maybe that is what is informing our lackadaisical attitude in terms of the preventive measures.
Indeed. I mean, the minister there, we heard him, he was talking about obviously equipment and so on, but you're right, because about 2 or 3 days before the equipment was sort of collected from the airport, he actually called journalists together to say that, can we please urge people to actually keep on with the preventive measures, keep on with the wearing of face masks. He made that a point, and yet, as you rightly say, I mean, I looked into one minibus and there was only one person wearing a face mask. It passed the checkpoint and they weren't stopped.
Nobody cares now.
Yeah, the police did not stop them.
And I think also perhaps what the minister should also concentrate on more, it's good to concentrate on the health sector in their preventive or in their corona response mechanism plan. But also a lot of planning should be done outside of the health sector because eventually what we are seeing, far less people are with corona in the health system than outside of the health system. If you look at the Gambia, they told us that the current statistic of positive cases is about 1,000 people. But out of these 1,000 people, based on their work, the bulk of these people are at home because they are asymptomatic. And for them, asymptomatic people do not transfer the virus. So because of that, they are told to self-isolate at home. However, knowing how the Gambian system is, how many of our families or how many of our individuals can be at home and self-isolate without interacting with anybody? And when they're at home, how are they monitored? Are they regularly monitored? Are they given medical supplies? So all those things need to be followed, and WHO now is on record telling people that being asymptomatic doesn't mean there is zero risk of transferability of the virus. You can be asymptomatic and still pose risk to the people that you're living with. And not every Gambian is well off to be able to go hire an apartment, rent an apartment, stay there for the period before you are confirmed negative again. So I think the health sector, the health ministry needs to also pay attention to this. In as much as it's good to have medical supplies, equipping the health system, as far as corona is concerned, let's also look at outside of the health system. I think it's very important.
I think it's an important point you make, because if we don't do that, then the health system will become overburdened again with people who then catch this dreaded virus and then have to be treated.
Exactly. And I think I also have the feeling now, the tracing, for me, the contact tracing is a little relaxed. Because if we have the bulk of our people with corona who are positively tested for having corona, being outside of the health system, receiving treatment at home, and the relatives of those people are not traced and tested, how are we sure that the people they are living it are not living with the virus? Well,
not only that, I've met so many people who told me flatly that they will never get tested, no matter how ill they get, because they're scared of this thing.
Exactly. I think now that the life is almost being normalized in the country. For me, we should find a way of either making testing kind of compulsory, if you like, or we can incentivize testing. For example, the government can take the lead in this thing. By the time they're calling everyone to return back home, to return back to work, they can make sure that nobody is admitted or nobody is going back to work without producing a negative corona result. Everyone. So the government can take a lead to make sure that all the civil servants are tested. In the Gambia, we have a civil servant population of about 50,000 or more than 40,000. By the time we do that, in no time, 40,000 people are tested. You come to the people in the formal sectors outside of the government. They can also make it a regulation. I understand many of the institutions are also already doing this.
That's right.
They can make it a duty to tell their staff that before end of the month, you have to be tested. You have to supply us with a negative corona test.
So
otherwise, your salary for this month will not be paid.
Well, this is it. So banks, GSM companies, and so on. I mean, here at QTV, they made sure all of us got tested.
Exactly. How much does it cost to do this thing?
And
nothing.
Others can
Absolutely
do it.
nothing. So it's just commitment. If the government can take the lead in this thing, make sure that all the civil servants are tested, and all the non-governmental organizations, all the people in the private sector, also urge their employees and incentivize it to make sure that they are tested, or their salary for the month is delayed, they will get tested.
I think that's a good point to end on, and that's a scary one. If you don't get tested, you might lose part of your salary. I think that will have everybody running to get tested. And our next story is actually kind of related, because we're talking about preparedness and so on. Well, is everybody prepared? Have a look at this video, and you make up your own mind about whether we are or not.
Today I can safely say that that consultation is now over, and the government has taken the decision to reopen all tertiary and TVET institutions in this country with effect from Wednesday, the 14th October 2020.
Meanwhile, he also revealed that his ministry is in consultation with the Ministry of Finance regarding the possibility of providing financial support to tertiary institutions. especially private schools. On the much talked about relief funds for Gambian students studying abroad, the permanent secretary says his ministry has 3 weeks ago effected payment to all embassies, and that about 836 students have already received their support packages.
I chose that clip for a very particular reason. 3 things in there. There's the reopening, there's tertiary institutions, particularly private ones, they mentioned there. And then there's a bit about foreign students abroad. 836 of them have been supported. But let's start at the beginning. The fact that with the reopening, you're talking about people relaxing, people not wearing face masks. Some of the people who've not been wearing face masks will be some of the people who are going back to these tertiary institutions. So how prepared are we?
It's scary. I actually think the reopening of the schools, particularly the universities, it's long overdue, because the trend or the norm we've seen in Africa and even beyond Africa is a lot of the tertiary educations are going back to, are resuming to on-campus learning.
That's right.
I think in the Gambia, the stopgap measure put in place by the Ministry of Higher Education, that is, by various institutions, including University of the Gambia, by transferring lectures to virtual, it's very good. It's a good stopgap measure to make sure that there is no huge interruption to the academic calendar. But in countries like ours, I mean, the effectiveness of virtual learning leaves a lot to be desired.
Indeed.
Therefore, I think the reopening of the tertiary institutions is long overdue. However, I think, just like we said of the first story, a lot of precautionary measures also needs to go into reopening of the tertiary
Well, that's the point I was going to make,
exactly.
Because you say long overdue, but despite the fact that we've had all this time to prepare for it, are we actually prepared?
I really think we perhaps we are not very really prepared. In countries like Ghana, for example, before they allowed their tertiary schools to reopen, what the government had done was to make sure that all tertiary institutions, whether public or private, are all fumigated at the cost of the government. I think this is one of the things that the Gambia can do, because we do know that the tertiary education, or the education system generally, is one of the sectors that is badly hit, particularly the private schools, the private universities, because they entirely depend on tuition fees. And students can only pay tuition fee
if they're attending.
Now that they have not been going, their semesters were interrupted, there is less revenue. The financial muscle of these institutions is very weakened. So I doubt whether they'll be able to fumigate at their own cost. This is where the government can come in. The tertiary education people have been calling for subsidy from the government. If you cannot do this, do that. The basics that you can do is to fumigate the schools. In addition to that, equip the schools, public or private, equip all of them with sanitary materials.
Face masks.
Supply them with face masks, supply them with hand washing machines. These are things that you can do.
I was quite surprised when in one of the broadcasts we heard the minister asking parents to make sure that they provide their children with face masks.
So that's my thing. We must not, in our corona response, we must not be seen to be only focusing on the health sector at the expense of the outside health sector. Schools are one of the sectors I was referring to. Don't just open schools, because of course it is important that the academic calendar
because there's a pressure, isn't there, for them to reopen. As you said, you use the term long overdue.
The pressure is very important, but we must not bow down to pressure when we are ill prepared to respond to the system. So I think the preparation aspect is very key, and here we cannot pass that burden on the school owners, because we do know that their financial muscles are weakened. This is where government can come in. Support them to do this thing. This is the minimum. But also beyond the support, make sure that the things are implemented or are enforced and adhered to. We do understand that. You just told me, or confirm my point, that a lot of the people are not now wearing face masks. A lot of the institutions with even hand washing machine, many of their people are no more washing their hands. So let the government make sure that these schools are given face masks, are given hand washing machines. But in addition to that, there should be monitoring mechanisms to make sure that the schools are doing what they are supposed to do.
Is there a wider point about the society? Because I go into some of the shops along Kairaba Avenue here, and they've got signs saying no face mask, no entry, no hand washing, no entry. And yet there might be 7 or 8 of us going in, and maybe only 2 or 3 of us will actually adhere to that. The others will just say, and they let them in because they want their custom.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Exactly. Exactly. A lot of institutions are doing that. A lot of business
So how do we make us, the public, realize that we have a duty too, and not just leave it all to government or to the institutions and so on? Let's take ownership and say, I'm protecting my own health as well as everybody else's health.
So that's our responsibility. Our personal health should be our personal responsibility. But it's unfortunate that not everyone is seeing it this way. Perhaps this is where also the communication should be intensified.
Sure.
And even without the communication, when people are seeing, or when more people are tested, people see that we still have corona in the country, perhaps they will be serious.
Sure.
They will be agitated to take their personal health seriously. They will be agitated to take the corona preventive measures. But where the results are coming, and what the results are communicating to us is that, look, corona is actually phasing out in the Gambia. You begin to relax. You are like, perhaps the next person to me doesn't have corona.
That's right.
Because the results is only 2 people are having corona today. So I don't really need to bother. Well, that may not be the case.
Correct.
So communication needs to be intensified.
Sure.
But also the government needs to expand and broaden their tests. Perhaps we will begin to see more results.
You and I are journalists. Do we have a part to play in this?
Yes.
And what is that part, really?
We still need to make sure that we create more airtime, more platforms, more awareness creation on our various platforms or whatever, wherever we were, to make sure that people are sensitized.
Sure.
For me, the key here is, it's common sense for people to take their personal health, seriously. But unfortunately, one of our senior guys used to say, common sense is not even common.
It's not common, yeah.
So where common sense is not common, it ought to be somebody's responsibility to make sure that the next person, perhaps, who ought to have common sense, but doesn't have common sense, now have common sense.
Quite.
That is your responsibility.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Thanks for that. And that takes us nicely on to our next one. And it's about discipline. What kind of discipline? Positive discipline, apparently. It was a new one on me. Have a look at this clip.
Punishment in public schools were banned in 1914, but remained de facto commonplace until 1984, when a law banning all corporal punishment of minors, whether in schools or in home, was introduced. It remains to be seen whether PDET will finally bring an end to the practice.
PDET. I confess, I hold my hand up, I had never heard the acronym or the phrase positive discipline in everyday teaching is what it stands for. I am of old school, where when I went to primary school, a teacher's idea of discipline was to walk around with a cane and hit any child for the slightest infraction. Sometimes just you were running in the corridor, that was enough to get you a whack or 6. When this story was broadcast, I canvassed my colleagues who were much, much younger than me. I was at school 100 years ago. And they were saying, oh, no, our generation, we can't take being caned, and we wouldn't like being caned. And so what this is about is positive discipline without using the cane. But the statistic, if I can just bring it in quickly, about it's been banned since 1914 in this country.
Yes.
And yet.
It's true. Corporal punishment is banned in the country. And of course, unlike your generation, our generation of schoolgoers at the time were privileged, at least not to be caned, perhaps like you were.
Right.
But in our time also, we were kind of caned, but perhaps not at a different level. Perhaps at a different level. But I think I particularly also like this story because I think it's high time we inculcate, we imbibe in the principle of our education system, positive discipline.
Sure.
Well, I made some findings about it, and I was made to understand that positive discipline is whilst you teaching the student, you imbibing in the person, you inculcating in the student some positive values,
yes,
the long-term values.
That's
to
right.
work on your dreams rather than just focus on the short-term results.
Sure.
So unlike your time where you were keen, our time we might not be keen,
sure,
but the teachers were only looking at the short-term results.
Well, that's right.
That is, can you pass my exam? Are my students able to pass their exams?
Yeah.
Are they submitting their results on time? Are they paying attention while they are in class?
Right.
If this is not happen, the likelihood of the student yielding at the teacher, the teacher yielding at the student is very high.
Indeed.
Perhaps you might even be punished, not beaten, but you are punished in one way or the other.
Sure.
And this is not what the teachers want to achieve.
Sure.
The teachers want to make sure that the long-term goal of the student, they guide the student to be able to achieve his or her long-term goal.
Sure.
Perhaps the student is even too young to be able to envision certain things.
Sure.
It now becomes your responsibility, not just to teach the person to understand the subject that you are teaching, but to teach the person to develop goals, long-term visions, and guide them.
I'm glad you said that, particularly about long-term visions, because when we were discussing this in the office after the story was broadcast, people were sort of struggling to grasp the concept.
Yeah.
So I said, well, let me give you an example. I said, you are the younger generation. You will inherit this country. If somebody is teaching you or your children or your younger brothers and sisters, and they don't tell them, when you're driving in your father's car, don't throw that cup or that can of Coke into the road, because nobody's going to sweep it. I've never seen anybody sweeping the streets here. You know, so parents have a duty, teachers have a duty, and that is the kind of positive discipline, because you're saying to them, you're going to inherit this country, make it a country fit to be inherited by you.
So that's the entire concept about positive discipline. It is not just disciplining them to pass my subject, but it's beyond the school or beyond the scope of that school subject. Just like you said, how can you take care of the street, public facilities, responsibility as if it is yours? So how do you have a vision to develop this country beyond just passing my exam and going to university? So positive discipline helps the students to be able to reason for themselves, develop visions, develop long-term goals, and the teacher is right there with them, guiding them. However, though, some people mistaken positive discipline to mean, there is no limit. The students are just allowed to do anything.
No, quite.
Children need to be guided,
of course,
and it is our responsibility as caregivers, as teachers, as parents, to guide them,
and without resorting to violence.
Without resorting to violence.
Which is what corporal
so positive
is.
Violence doesn't necessarily mean that allowing the child to do whatever he or she likes. Having no limit for the child. It means guiding the child to have vision and working with that child to see the fruitful implementation of that vision.
Exactly, a brilliant point, because that brilliantly sums it up, and a brilliant point to end on. And we'll take a quick commercial break, and when we come back we'll have another story that really interested me, and that was something of a first here in the Gambia. Don't go away, join us after this quick break.
Maybe the smallest country in Africa, but it will host the second largest gathering of world leaders in 2022. To successfully host the OIC Summit and put the Gambia on the global stage, the government of the Gambia set up OIC Gambia to mobilize resources for the implementation of key development and infrastructure projects on a scale never seen before. 20 new roads will be constructed across the country, and the Bertel Harding Highway will be expanded into a dual carriage highway of 2 lanes on each side from the airport to Sting Corner. All people in the Gambia deserve clean water and a constant flow of electricity. Therefore, an entirely new water system will be constructed, including new transmission and distribution networks to meet the increasing demand. In order to provide a more reliable supply of electricity, the OIC Gambia project will replace and double the capacity of the NAWEC transformers and overhead electric cables. We will equip the police with modern apparatus and technical training in an effort to keep the streets of the Gambia safe. By building the largest international conference center in the region, a 5-star hotel with state-of-the-art facilities, first-class mobility services, and improving the VVIP experience at the Banjul International Airport, OIC Gambia will position the Gambia as the leading conference destination in West Africa. With our partners in the tourism sector, we will reinforce the preeminent position of our nation, the Smiling Coast, as a go-to destination. The OIC Gambia will create strategic partnerships that calls for the involvement of local talent and businesses as a matter of requirement. In short, OIC Gambia projects will create jobs, boost commerce, accelerate growth, improve the urban outlook and lifestyles of many families across the Gambia. So let's support the OIC Gambia as it prepares us for one of the biggest global events. OIC Gambia, building today for a better tomorrow.
Tap into our many and active followers online. Join our social community by calling 32444444 or send us a message on any of our social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. QTV Gambia.
Welcome back. You're watching QTV and you're watching The Week in Review. I'm your host, Adi Darami. And in case you've just joined us, you've missed 3 very, very good stories. But don't despair, we have 7 more. So no need to cry, okay? Now, this one really interested me. Something of a first for the Gambia. What am I talking about? This one. You'll love it as much as I did, I'm sure. Have a look.
we could not have independently established the job center without the collaboration and the partnership with some stakeholders like IOM, as I mentioned already, which have provided us with support to renovate this building and provide facilities like computers and other equipment for the effective running of this center.
The Gambia has a 60% youth population for whom unemployment remains their biggest challenge. The creation of the job center should help create youth employment, which may discourage the so-called backway syndrome.
Now, discouraging the so-called backway syndrome. Now, that's what we've just heard there. I said I love this because it talks about launching our first ever job center. I mean, it's long overdue. I think, obviously, in the West, you know, they've been around for 50, 60 years, job centers. A good thing for the Gambia?
I totally agree. I think it's a very good initiative for the Gambia. Because, like he rightly said, if you look at the unemployment rates in the Gambia, it's very appalling. He said the youth population of the country is about 60%. And according to statistics from the Gambia Bureau of Statistics, it says about 40 or so % of the youths are unemployed.
That's right.
And if you look at the national unemployment rate, it's 35 point something.
Sure.
This is too high.
Yeah.
But with the coming of an initiative like the Job Center, I think perhaps this can help in bridging the employment gap in the country. Because what it does is, for example, it provides people with the available vacancies in the country, but also it gives some personalized coaching to people.
That's right.
Some people perhaps have the skills, but they don't know the right industry that fits their skills.
Sure.
Some people also want to do some tertiary education, but they don't know perhaps the industry that is in demand or the skills that is in demand that they should go and learn, because these two things are very important.
Indeed.
In as much as you want to go and acquire some skills, it is good you acquire skills that is needed.
Yeah, quite.
And this is what one of the things that the Job Center can do. They can tell you perhaps in the Gambia, I want to believe they'll be doing a lot of research also.
They are,
so they can tell you in the Gambia perhaps in the next 5 to 10 years, more engineers will be needed in this field. Therefore, if you want to be in the sciences or if you want to do further education and you don't want to be idle after, go into this field.
Yes.
Those are kind of guidance they can give. They can also give some coaching, give some coaching to be able to coach people.
And I think you've actually kind of hit the nail on the head, because it's about employability, but it also, you know, marketability, making yourself marketable. So, you know, get trained in something that somebody wants, because you see people building houses and they've not gone to an architect because they said, oh, you know, it's too expensive and so on. And then somebody builds a monstrosity for them and they regret it. And they think, oh, you know, if only. And yet, you know, as you rightly say, there'll be coaching. And they'll be saying to people, well, you know, you have these skills, but perhaps the particular field or sector you want to go into, there might not be very many opportunities either now or in the future. Why don't you think about something else? That's that kind of career guidance, which is really is what is needed. Surely.
That's why I actually like the creation or the initiative of the Job Center. And the earlier statistics that I quoted for you, the Gambia Bureau of Statistics, their unemployment rate. In the same research, they were able to confirm that about 70% of people who need employment or who are seeking employment, they have nowhere to go but to their friends and family. It's me coming to Mr. Ade, I just graduated from university and I need employment.
Do you know of somebody who's looking for?
Perhaps your knowledge of the job market is very limited. You are just here. Perhaps your experience in the job seeking industry is also very limited. So you will not be able to give me the adequate advice that I need. That's why with the creation of centers like this, I can just go there and they'll be able to perhaps give me all the information that I need. I don't need to go to a friend or a family. I know there is a professional institution manned by professionals who will be able to give me all the information I need. But beyond that, they'll be able to guide me in the kind of job that I want, or guide me in acquiring the kind of skills that I want.
You're absolutely right, because essentially what will happen in some of the cases, for example, you walk into the job center and you say, you know, this is my skill set, you know, I can do this. They type it in. This is the skill set. This person is looking for employment. And they might say to you, oh, sorry to tell you, there's none in Greater Banjul, but there's a job fitting exactly that description in Basse. do you mind moving?
Exactly.
If you don't know it's there, then you
won't be able to do it. That's the point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think this will come. This is coming at the right time. The unemployment rate in the country, it's high and continues to increase.
Sure.
But the lack of information among job seekers also, it's a problem.
Yeah.
So this will come to help us, to help the job seekers, to have all the information that they need about employment,
Sure.
to have all the information that they need to make themselves marketable by acquiring the right skills,
Sure.
but also to make sure that they are in touch with people who are also needing employees.
Yeah.
Because at the job center, it is not just employment seekers that go to the job centers. It's people also who have vacancies to fill.
Yeah.
They go to them, inform them, just like you rightly said, there may be somebody from Basse
Sure.
telling the job center that I actually have an opening here
Sure.
with this skill set. If you see anybody, if the person is willing to come down to Basse, can you drive the person to come to me?
Indeed.
So all these are possibilities. Whilst employees are going there to find information,
Sure.
employers are also going there. So it's kind of, I mean, matchmaking them.
Yeah.
You come needing my service,
yeah.
I go needing a service to offer, I mean, giving a service, and there we meet,
You could
and
put them
perhaps
together.
we can make a contract and life goes on.
Yeah,
So
good.
I think this is a very good initiative.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think we're definitely in agreement there. A very, very good initiative, in fact, and one that I'm really looking forward to monitoring over the next 3, 6, 9, and 12 months to see how it works, and I hope it's a huge success. It deserves to be. Now on to something completely different. Well, we keep mentioning Basse there, just in the example that we're giving. This is something else to do with Basse, and of course, I'm sure it's something that everybody is aware of. What am I talking about? Well, February, something big happened. Have a look.
Unlike my last visit, this is a moment of hope, but not despair. It is an occasion of joy, but not sadness. And it is a day of thanksgiving, but not gloom. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the new Basse market will be built to the modern international standards and of high quality.
Those words from the president must have been music to the ears of the people of Basse, built to international modern standards, high
agree.
quality. I mean, we need it, don't we?
This is a moment of hope indeed.
Sure.
I completely agree with Mr. President that, I mean, this is time not for despair, but for hope. Because we do know that since February, the people of Basse were kind of hopeless and desperate.
Hundreds of millions lost in the fire.
Hundreds of millions were burned in just
February.
5 hours or so.
Yeah, quite.
Everything burned to ashes. And this is perhaps the biggest, and not the sole, but the biggest market around that area where people rely on for their livelihood.
That's right.
So rebuilding of that market is very important. However, though, I think the amount of money that is also going there is quite significant, you know. I mean, it's $72 million is I was meant to understand.
That's right.
I think that money is enough, to be honest, to build them any kind of market, any kind of model, like the president said, to international standard.
Sure.
And we do hope and pray the contractors will build us a market that is worth $72 million.
Indeed.
A market that is worth every dollar that is going into the project.
And you say that for a reason, because in the past we've seen where various structures have been built over the years. I mean, this goes back decades. And they said they spent X amount of it. But when you look at it, you think to yourself, you must be joking. Yeah.
This is all we keep complaining about every day when it comes to government projects. And I most particularly emphasis on road construction, for example. I have seen in this country where if they are building, for example, a 50-kilometer highway, before they even finish the 49-kilometer, the first 5 kilometers that they build is already damaged.
I'm smiling under this mask because it's one of my favorite things that I complain about, but carry on, please.
So that's my point. You see contractors building structures, investing millions of dollars, only for you to come and begin to question, even with your non-engineering eyes, for you to question the quality of the job that goes into this thing. But we hope perhaps this is not going to be the case of Jigo, I'm not sure, of the construction company that is given to build a market. We want to make sure that, or we want to see a market that is worth every dollar, every penny that goes there. And not only that, we also want to see a timely completion. That's one challenge that many of our contractors also are doing. because at the beginning of the contract or at the time of, filing their bid, they're so excited.
They make all sorts of
They
promises.
make all sorts of promises.
Yeah,
I will finish this in 3 months. I'll finish this in 5 months. But in the case of Basse, we made to understand that they want to build the market in 12 months.
That's correct.
We hope this is possible, and we do hope that the contractors will abide by the time that they agree with the government to deliver, not just on time, but of high quality.
And also, I think there's an important element to that timeliness, because for the people who are waiting to move into it, there is an expectation that you've promised us it's going to be ready by such and such a date. Is it ready by that date?
Exactly.
Can I move in? Can I start doing business? Because this is their livelihood. It's what they do. You know?
And exactly. So I'm sure as the government is preparing to build, they also perhaps trying to recoup investment somewhere, or make sure they have some money somewhere. Because for most of them, I do know, life is back to zero now.
Yes, quite.
Life is
many
back
of
to
them
zero.
were not insured. We found out.
Exactly. No, in this country, insurance at that era is to think highly of them.
Yeah, quite.
I am telling you.
Yeah,
so no insurance, no social protection. Most of them now raised to zero. So they have to start life from zero to come back. So as the government is building, they're also trying to fight back, or firefight perhaps, to have the needed revenue, the needed capital to be able to go back into the business as soon as the place is done. But beyond the people that are there, the market is also going to be revenue generating for the Basse Area Council.
Indeed.
Because by the time it is ready, rates will be paid, duties will be paid, and this will be revenue generating for the Basse Area Council. And we do hope and pray Basse Area Council is going to use those revenue to plow back in the community where it is coming from.
Absolutely. Good point. And we hope they heard what Lamin has just said, because that's a crucial point about the kind of the revenue that is generated should be plowed back into the community from which it is generated. Now on to our next story, STEM and empowering women. What am I talking about? Have a look at this.
They were all supportive. The whole family was supportive. Just that some friends were like, you're smart, you can be a journalist, you can be a lawyer, so why choose this? Because you'll always be under the hot sun. It's a male-dominated area. You'll be working with men 24/7. So that too was a challenge. But because I was so passionate into doing construction, I didn't listen to all that they had to say to me. I was focused on what I wanted to do, and that has really helped me.
I was focused on what I wanted to do, and that has really helped me. I chose that clip because it kind of encapsulates what a lot of young women go through when they're trying to go to what is meant to be traditionally male-dominated sectors or areas of professions. And
I must say that I really like the lady's passion and determination. She was just saying that a lot of friends, and perhaps even family were telling her that, look, this is a male-dominated area. I must just add, a lot of them will not just say it's a male-dominated area, but they will say this is job for male. This is job reserved for men. You understand? And perhaps we've seen this myth is increasingly been proven to be untrue. She is a perfect example. And over the world, we've seen increasingly ladies are going into male-dominated areas. I don't only call them male-dominated areas. These are jobs that we think it's only suited for men. Who said, carpentry, bricklaying, the sciences, motor mechanic are for male. It's not written anywhere.
Yes. I mean, it's not just...
These are skills that we acquire by training.
Absolutely.
If a man can learn the skill, the woman can also learn the skill.
Absolutely.
So therefore, I think this is it's very commendable to see a young girl of her age defying all the odds, damning all the views that are coming to her, to say, look, this is where my passion is, and I'm going to follow my passion. Following your passion is very important in determining whatever career, whatever profession you're going to choose for yourself. Because at the end of the day, it is not just the money, but it is the passion that gets you into that field. That passion will be what will propel you to go forward or to stay there.
Absolutely, because what tends to happen is that you get persuaded not to go into a particular field because they say, oh, it's a man's job. And then you go into what is allegedly a woman's, and you don't like it. And so you're stuck in a job that you hate, but you have to go every day because that's how
that's what the society made available for you. So it's good that people are now defying the odds to go where their passion is, and this is what should be encouraged. However, though, the government has a lot of responsibility in this thing. We have to be seen to have at least some affirmative measures in this thing. Let's encourage women. by giving, I think the former government was at least at some point doing this thing.
Right.
We've seen ladies who are into sciences,
right.
who are into mathematics, who are into engineering. We are given one form of scholarship or the other,
right.
both in the country and
right.
outside of the country.
Right.
I think this is what the present government should also emulate if they are not doing.
To redress the imbalance.
To redress the imbalance, but also to encourage more women to go into the field.
Yeah.
Perhaps their families will not be willing to support them because you are going into a job that for the family is reserved for men. Yeah. It's a male domain.
Yeah,
but for the government, no, this is a job that anybody who is willing to should be able to do. Sure. Therefore, let's make scholarships available.
Sure.
Let's encourage them. Let's motivate them. Let's incentivize them to go into this field.
Sure.
This is one way we can correct the stereotype, if you like,
sure.
or we can correct the imbalance that is associated with this kind of job.
Sure.
But one of the biggest problems in this sector also is the stereotype.
Sure.
From both the teachers and the parent.
Sure.
We send some messages that is explicit or perhaps implicit
possibly,
meaning that this job is actually not for you.
Yes.
You are a girl child.
Correct.
This particular job is meant for your brother, not for you.
Yes.
Therefore, can you be a lawyer, like she said? Can you be a journalist? These are soft jobs for you.
I'm glad you said that because sometimes it's quite subtle when, and this is something that teachers have to know. When a girl child who's at school comes to you and says, you know, I want to be this, and then they said, are you sure that's something for you?
Exactly.
For you? Are you sure?
Exactly.
You know, so they're not telling you don't do it, but just that doubt that they're throwing and casting.
You also begin to think twice. Perhaps if my teacher is telling me, can I do this? That means I cannot do this, perhaps.
Let's end
so
there. We have several stories to go through.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Otherwise we won't get through. But this is another one which really interested me because it's a community that decided to raise multi-million dollars to actually build their own hospital. But it's not gone according to plan, not exactly. Have a look at this.
President Barrow's visit comes amidst uncertainty over the completion of the hospital due to funding challenges. The Alonghare Development Association, which consists of natives and residents of the village and those in the diaspora, are funding the $26 million project full contributions. However, the economic impact of the COVID-19 has affected this initiative.
Try to contribute and establish it. It's not a matter of fund now, neither money, but as a good citizen, and the understanding which we have between them.
I'm not looking for profit anymore.
Thank you very much. It's not a matter of profit again. They challenge themselves, and we also challenge ourselves and said, enough is enough. It is not that time is running out, but time has run out, and we are here to make it right for the betterment and in the best interest of the Gambian fraternity. They are Mr. President. This is their appeal. It cannot be overemphasized, and we will not allow you to go through without not explaining it to you, sir. This is what the challenge which they are facing.
I had a really good reason why I chose that, and I didn't choose it to show that, okay, this is a community that has been over-ambitious. The reason I chose it is because, for me, it sort of encapsulates what has happened because of COVID-19. You have people who are natives or residents of a particular place, as well as those in the diaspora, saying, let's do something, let's build something, not rely on government. And then all of a sudden, because of COVID-19, where your relatives can't go to work or so, you're now sending money to them rather than to the project. And so the project ends up suffering. And really, that was the reason why. I mean, are you aware that this is the kind of impact that we've been seeing around the country?
I must say that I really like the ambition of the community, of the Alonghare community. But also I like the determination of the contractor. You can see what they are saying. Here we have reached a point, we're not looking at profit. We want to make sure that the ambition that these people have for their community, for the people, is realized, even at the expense of ourselves.
Sure. So
I think that's very good to be, that deserves commendation. However, though, their appeal is very relevant and it's gone to the right people. Because the basic or the minimum that we all know is that healthcare provision, it's for the government to do. If the community had undertaken this initiative, a giant project like this thing, a giant hospital like this thing, and like they said, $26 million to come from a small community like Alonghare, it's not easy, you know. You won't see that in a lot of big settlements in the Combos even. So for Alonghare people to have the commitment, the dedication to be able to part with $26 million to build hospital, what they could easily say, like you said, look, this is meant for the government. Let's allow the government to do this. If they don't do it, we blame them. They have sat back, realized perhaps, like the government always say, the government cannot do it alone. If it is true and genuinely so, government cannot do it alone. let's come together to do this for ourselves, for the citizens. Now they have realized, because of COVID, they have short of the promises that they made. They would have loved, I am sure at the beginning, they had no intention to go back to the government to say, we needed actually you to help us on this thing. Their intention is start and finish. Perhaps to invite the government to come and launch it. Now, because of COVID, there is a problem. They're going back to the people that they should go back to explain their constraints, to explain perhaps their challenge, so that the government can support them. I think they deserve to be supported.
I think yes, I totally agree with you on that point. Let's take another quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we have 3 more stories, so don't go away. Stay tuned.
With QCell's eFund service, you never have to worry about running out of credit, whether you're completely out of cash or far from a credit vendor. QCell's eFund is your way out. Load any amount between $10 and $100 now and pay later. Dial *393# to get started. As part of our efforts to always be your trusted network, we encourage you to use *393# for all your eFund requests and say goodbye to the old *118#. Do note that *118# will no longer be functional after November 15, 2020. So remember, it's *393# whenever you want to access the eFund service. Call 111 for more information. QCell, Sunyabus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm Ari Darami, and my guest today is Lamin Jahate from GPU, and also a practicing journalist. And in case you're just joining us, I don't know where you've been, but you've missed a lot. But hey, don't go away. We've got 3 more stories to go into, and so let's crack on with them. Have a look at this one, and I'll explain when we come back.
This is part of our $110 million project with Gumworks that encompasses many projects, including roads, Bundu Maternity Ward, our town hall at KMC, and of course, the beautiful Latrikunda Sabaji Market. We are very grateful to the partnership of Gumworks under the leadership of Mr. Ibrahim Acham, and we look forward to many projects in the future.
There you had the mayor of Kanifing, the new Latrikunda Sabiji Market, but I chose that particular clip because he mentioned some of the other developments that they're hoping to undertake, and we were talking about, not leaving everything to government and so on. I wish we could have shown the market because it looks quite impressive.
I know, right?
But we're seeing a lot of these developments. So the reason I chose it is because it also shows that in spite of COVID, things haven't ground to a halt. Things are happening, development is happening, surely.
I think KMC is doing extremely well. Despite perhaps their limited revenue, particularly during the COVID, they might have downscaled some of the things they are doing, but they refuse to be stopped.
Yes.
Because when we say that COVID is the new norm, we need to learn to cope with it, we need to learn to live with it. That's exactly what KMC is doing. Perhaps our revenue is badly battered, but with the little that we have, we make good use of it to make sure that it is benefiting the people who are actually even giving us that money. Because this duty, the tax that KMC collected, is from within this community.
Indeed.
Therefore, it is rightfully, it should be rightfully invested back into the people. And that's what we have seen them do. They just told us that, like the mayor just said, the Latrikunda market is completed. But they have a project at Bundu Maternity.
That's
and
right.
in addition to that, they have 100 new shops to build at different markets, or perhaps at the Latrikunda market. So this is a very good initiative. KMC deserves to be commended. I mean, it's an example of a council that is doing extremely well.
Sure. I mean, and again, I'm glad you mentioned that point, because usually when I've shown something from that council, I've always said, I hope other councils, or it's not that I'm trying to promote them or anything, but it's like you just said. I mean, we still have 2 more stories, but, it just very quickly. I mean, the reason you and I are talking about this is because they're setting a good example, aren't they?
They're setting the precedent, and it is good to show and talk about it, because perhaps others can emulate it.
Yeah, quite.
Others can. You don't need to sit and wait for the central government to do everything for you or to give you everything.
Sure.
Manage with the little that you have.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Thanks for that. And as I said, 2 more stories to go, and the penultimate story, again, you'll see there's a kind of theme to some of these stories that I've chosen today, and that's to show that in spite of COVID-19, things are happening, things are going on, including this one.
The facility will help women vegetable sellers at the Serekunda market minimize the high percentage of vegetable losses due to spoilage. This is the first cold storage unit to be installed at the Serekunda market. The project will also reduce the cost of transportation, as they will now have an opportunity to buy in bulk.
The project is a very innovative project.
had to, interrupt the new British High Commissioner there, but I love this story. Cold storage unit at the market, they don't have to worry about either spoilage or about having to take stuff home and probably store it at home in order to refrigerate and then bring it back the next day. They can store it on site.
True.
A great thing,
it's an innovative project, like the ambassador or the High Commissioner began to say. For me, for two reasons.
Sure.
One of it is because it is powered by solar.
Yes.
Now the market doesn't need to completely rely on NAVEC. Do we have electricity or not? Whether there is NAVEC or not, at least our cold store is constantly available with energy.
Absolutely.
I think this is very good.
Sure.
And it's innovative that, I mean, I think as a country, this is the direction we should begin to go.
Be.
Particularly as we have seen that, I mean, NAVEC has proven to us time and again that they cannot power this country with electricity.
Well, that's right.
So therefore, I think we should begin to think the direction that the British High Commission.
And I like the fact that you said that they've proven to us, because to me it's not an admission of failure, it's a statement of fact. We have all this sunlight in Africa. Let's use it. Let's harness the solar to power something like this, and let's emulate it across the country and across the sub-region.
That's the thing. So I said it was innovative. One of the reasons is for that, but the other thing, it's also like you briefly mentioned, it's the fact that the women now need not to struggle or bother about spoilage.
Yeah, quite.
That was the hallmark of their business before.
Absolutely.
A lot of the women at that market, I understand, used to go all the way to Senegal, to Casamas, to buy their goods, vegetable, to come and sell it. Sometimes the market, we do know the market fluctuates.
Of course.
In good times, you are able to sell all of them within a short period.
Sure.
But when the market is not very good, after investing all the money that you use to buy the thing, to transport, and your energy that you use to be able to get the thing here, only for everything to perish.
Yeah.
Because the market is not good, and there is no cold store.
Yeah,
there is nowhere to store it. Now that problem is no more. Thanks to the cold store. I think this is very good.
Brilliant, yes. And thank you for that, Lamin. And now on to our final story. This one is not a Gambian story, but it's one I chose because everywhere I went, people were talking about it. What am I talking about? Have a look.
There have been many reactions to Wednesday's debate, but unlike the Trump-Biden showdown, many analysts expressed satisfaction with how both candidates had conducted themselves throughout the debate. At least one news outlet gave the verdict, this time America won.
This time America won. And of course the hashtag, the few times that she was interrupted, Kamala Harris said, without even looking at Pence, he'll be over there and she'll say, I am speaking. And it kind of summed up the tone. She kind of put him in his place. But also, we actually got a debate, unlike the first one between the presidential candidates, which one, I mean, it absolutely got trashed by the European press. They said it was a disgrace to democracy. This one was more like it. And unfortunately, there's only meant to be one VP debate. And now, just before we sort of came to record, the next presidential one has been cancelled. Not postponed, but cancelled. A good thing for democracy that we could have something like the vice presidential debate?
I totally agree. I think this debate, like the narrator said, for me was less difficult to moderate, and it was more like a debate than a confrontation or an argument.
Because people actually dealt with specific subjects.
Exactly. And of course, there were some intermittent interruptions.
It happens.
Mostly from Pence, but also sometimes from Kamala. But compare this to the presidential debate, which was more chaotic.
135 interruptions by the president.
Thank you so much. You can hardly start a sentence that Trump or perhaps that the other party will not interrupt. So this one we have seen, the good thing there is it flowed. And people are able to articulate their points. And for me, the high point of the debate was the discussion on the current affair. By that I mean the corona thing.
The corona thing, yes.
You can see Kamala saying this was the worst or the biggest presidential administration failure ever in the history of the United States.
Which is quite a statement,
very loaded statement. But of course, Pence came back swiftly and vehemently to rebut that statement. But I mean, depending on where you stand, I think the COVID argument, for me, almost carried the day. In addition to that, though, will be the issue of the mail-in voting.
Sure,
We do
sure,
know
sure.
in less than 2 or 3 weeks, America is heading to election.
Sure.
And one of the issues, or one of the most controversial issues that is right now being discussed in America is the issue of mail-in voting.
Sure.
Because we understand COVID may not allow them to do the usual kind of voting.
Of course.
Now that they may be using their post office, their post box.
Sure.
Trump and Pence are all out to criticize this system.
We're running out of time.
Oh.
And just in one sentence or two, would you like to see similar debates happen here in the Gambia?
I was actually going to end with that. I think it's high time.
Sure.
If there is anything that Gambia should copy from American politics,
sure.
I think it's the presidential debate.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And on that note, and just to say, in Sierra Leone, they've done it for the last 3 elections. Wow. So I don't know what Gambia's waiting for. But I'd just like to end by saying a huge thank you to my guest, Lamin Jahate of GPU and the practicing journalist. Lamin, thank you so much. Some really, really good insight into some of those stories.
It's a pleasure to be here, Adi.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you so
to
much.
our viewers, of course, what can I say? Thank you for watching, thank you for staying with us, and thank you for believing us. You've been watching The Week in Review. I'm your host, Adi Darami, and I'm saying thanks again for watching, and goodbye until the next time. Goodbye.